This is the definition of cronyism. The definition. You look in the dictionary, flip to the C's, cronyism, it'll be a picture of Dow Constantine as the CEO of Sound Transit. This segment is brought to you in partnership with our friends over at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. So there's been a lot of rumors about what Dow Constantine will do after his 4 terms as King County executive. Of course, we previously thought maybe he wanted to be named the next president of UW. UW has already named its next president. It is not Dow Constantine. Dow Constantine has said he's not running for re-election. Thank God, after 16 years, one would hope, should have not run for re-election 8 years ago. And his term is done at the end of this year. So now we found out what he really wants to do. And what Dow Constantine really wants to do is be the next CEO of Sound Transit, which pays up to $650,000 a year. So you might say, well, okay, is he qualified for it? I mean, he was the King County executive for 4 terms. Qualification, I would argue no. But even if he were the most qualified person on the planet to be the next CEO of Sound Transit, it would be the most corrupt decision in the world to place him in that position. Now, before I get to my shocking agreement with one of the most leftist publications in the entire state of Washington, I will say I had a conversation with a source over the weekend who told me that they know that today Dow Constantine has the votes, that he is de facto a shoo-in to be the next CEO of Sound Transit. They're very sure of it. They've talked to people who are involved in it, counted the votes. Dow Constantine, if the vote happened today of the Sound Transit Board to decide the next CEO, it would be Dow Constantine. Now, this may be one of the only times I ever agree with Seattle's far-left blogosphere, because we're all in agreement that this reeks of cronyism and cannot be allowed to happen. So let's talk about the reasons why. So first, this from The Urbanist. Oh, yes. The Urbanist and I in full agreement, which is like a far left, like very progressive, pro-public transit, sort of, pro-anti-cop, whatever it is. You get the gist. Their headline, Dow Constantine reveals Sound Transit CEO bid. It says the executive committee of the Sound Transit Board of Directors dove into its CEO search and revealed it has winnowed the top candidates down to 5, including one of their own. Following months of rumors, Sound Transit Board member Dow Constantine revealed he is pursuing the CEO job, shedding light on what he intends to do at the conclusion of his 4th term as King County executive at year's end or potentially sooner. So a little bit of background here that's important to know when we talk about why this is cronyism. So the Urbanist, as the Urbanist points out, the county executive seat comes with automatic Sound Transit Board membership. I can pull this up for you. The county executive seat comes with automatic Sound Transit Board membership. So that's why he's on the Sound Transit Board, because it's automatic. The King County executive gets a seat on the board. And, however, the ability to appoint the county's delegation on the board. So after Constantine's 15 years on the board, King County's 10 members on the 18-member board are there because Constantine appointed them. Let that sink in. So he's been the King County executive for so long that every single member of King County's delegation to the Sound Transit Board, 10 of a total 18, are Dow Constantine appointees. Who decides who the next CEO of Sound Transit is? The Sound Transit Board of Directors. So Dow Constantine himself has personally appointed the people who would then elect him to a $650,000 a year job to be the CEO of Sound Transit. Cronyism, by definition. And the Urbanist and lefties in Seattle, lefty organizations agree. Like Seattle Subway, which is like a lefty sort of pro-public transit entity, they told the Urbanist, selecting any current board member as CEO would be a massive breach of ethical standards. The CEO will have to exercise great fortitude in standing up to this board to ensure the user experience is not sacrificed for the sake of special interests. And of course, how in the world would Dow Constantine and would the board stand up to Dow Constantine when he was one of them for so long and gave more than half of them their jobs? Riddle me that. This would be one of the most corrupt things to happen in King County in the last 20 years. If Dow Constantine gets to spend 16 years padding the Sound Transit Board with his appointees, and then having those appointees hand him a job worth $650,000 a year. So again, corrupt even if he were the most qualified person on the planet for the job. But of course, a secondary issue is that he is far from the most qualified person for the job. The Sound Transit CEO would be tasked with leading an agency that has, to the best of my knowledge, never finished a project on time and on budget. Sound Transit is notorious for going late in its projects, for costing people hundreds of millions of dollars in overages. It has already been a poorly run entity, and Dow Constantine has been on the board for 15 years, has appointed more than half the members of the board during this period of complete incompetence for Sound Transit and waste. And we now think that making him the CEO would make the situation better? Not to mention that he's done the exact same thing, if we need a little redundancy, he's done the exact same thing as the King County executive. What's happening right now in King County as we speak? They are having to make massive budgetary cuts, including to law enforcement, because they're so far in the hole. Because Dow Constantine did not heed advice, much like the state legislature, to cut back on spending, to eliminate some of the waste, and now they find themselves in such a massive budget deficit that they have to make cuts to the King County Sheriff's Office at a time when they can't afford to make any cuts to law enforcement because we're in such a bad public safety situation. So we have a guy who has run King County into the ground as its executive from every major, except maybe like left-wing ideology where he exceeds, on every major indicator of the health of the county and the quality of life, from homelessness to crime to substance abuse to a lack of affordability. He has failed. And it's not even close, not even open for debate. He has failed. In his second job as a board member for Sound Transit, he has been part of that entity's failure to deliver projects on time and on budget and make good on promises. And now you want to reward him, this is what we call failing up, with a $650,000 a year job handed to him by the people he appointed to the Sound Transit Board. How are we even having this conversation? I mean, there are stories that we discuss where I talk about corruption that's a little more nuanced. You might say it's like in the eye of the beholder, it's up to political opinions. This isn't nuanced at all. This isn't left up to political disagreements. The Urbanist and Brandi Kruse agree that this would be corrupt and it would be cronyism. You don't get two alternate media entities in the state of Washington more diametrically opposed than me and the Urbanist, except maybe the stranger. So if I agree and they agree, there's no room for interpretation. This would be corruption. It would be completely inappropriate. And it would be, like I said, one of the biggest political scandals in King County in 20 years. And we had a potential sex predator who was the mayor of Seattle. So this is wild stuff. It cannot be allowed to happen. As I said, a source told me he has the votes. So something's going to have to happen here. There has to be so much public outcry, and hopefully, the media does its job to point out how problematic this would be. And either Dow Constantine removes himself from consideration, or the board members wise up, and they're going to have the testicular fortitude to say, sorry, we can't appoint you to this position, even though you appointed us. Because that's just, you scratch my back, I scratch yours. So there's no wiggle room here for him to sort of try to play this as not corrupt, as not cronyism. It's the definition of it. So I don't know who would disagree. I look forward to someone coming out to try to defend Dow Constantine and this happening, but he's already in the final five. He never should have had his name for consideration. And in fact, it should be unlawful for a county executive that's a member of the Sound Transit Board to be considered for at least, let's say, 20 years. For 20 years, you cannot be considered for the CEO position of Sound Transit after you leave office. I think 20 years is fair. So this is a crazy situation. I've never seen anything quite like it. And the fact that I'm hearing from a source that he's already got the job. And one more wrinkle on this, he would have to either resign early or they'd have to appoint an interim CEO until the end of his term as King County executive, because they need to replace the current executive in the spring. So like in a month or two. So this is a crazy situation. And we will be following it closely, and we will not relent on this. And I hope our now friends at The Urbanist do the same. That segment was brought to you in partnership with our friends at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. Make sure you sign up for their newsletter while you're there.